Welcome back. Heart failure remains a concern to most South Africans. It occurs when the heart muscle doesn't pump blood as well as it should. According to the World Health Federation, approximately 37.7 million people worldwide are affected by heart failure. Joining us to give us more insights is Director of Newtricion Wellness Dieticians, that's Omy Naidoo. Omy, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, tell us, what do studies show us about the dietary components which are really crucial for promoting good heart health, but also reducing the risk of heart disease among thousands of patients?
It's a very good afternoon to you and your viewers, and thank you to Newzroom Afrika for always creating the platform for these kind of topics. When we look at the dietary components from the studies that have been shown to improve heart health, these include lots of fresh fruit and vegetables. These are normally including high antioxidants, and these can protect the heart and repair the heart vessels. We talk about lots of whole grains. Lean protein would be the third element. So lean protein includes things like your beans, peas, lentils, trying to avoid red meat and more of your fish. And then the fourth component or dietary component would be low-fat dairy products. So just to recap on that, fresh fruit and vegetables, whole grains, which means starches that are high in fiber, lean proteins, and then low-fat dairy products. These are the components which show us how to improve the heart health as well as lower the risk for heart disease or heart attacks.
Omy, what would you say are some of the most common misconceptions about diet and heart health? And how can individuals then navigate through conflicting information based on actual research which involves thousands of patients to make these informed dietary choices?
So I think we could probably spend the entire afternoon, discussing all of the misconceptions on the internet. And, with that point, I just want to highlight, and I do this with every interview, the role of a dietitian and the value of sitting with a professional who's qualified to practice evidence-based medicine. So you mentioned studies. So we as dietitians, we implement guidance based on what thousands and thousands of studies tell us help to improve a person's health. So if we look at just some of the common misconceptions, one of them could be chocolate is quite good for your heart because of the high cocoa content. We know cocoa is a strong antioxidant. That's actually a misconception because cocoa, in the processing of chocolate, the antioxidant content is reduced. And in actual fact, chocolates are high in calories, high in sugar, which is not really good for heart health. I could probably go on with two more items if time permits. So for instance, another one could be coconut oil. It seems to be seen as a superfood and quite healthy. But when you look at it, it's got lots of saturated fats, which is actually bad for the heart health. And then the last one could possibly we touch on is eggs being bad for your heart. We know that the egg yolk contains cholesterol, but when we look at it, eggs in general contain a lower amount of saturated fats versus other foods, meaning that it can be included in a heart-healthy diet. So just the three items we touched on was chocolates, your eggs, and then also looking at coconut oil.
Omy, could you discuss how dietary strategies, of course, supported by evidence from studies involving these patients, how can it be tailored to promote heart health, even if discussing specific recipes or meal plans isn't typical for you?
Yeah, so if we're looking at it, the way we tailor it, it's difficult to talk about a recipe on a live interview on a TV station.
Sure.
But with a dietitian, we sit and we create an individualized plan, meaning that no two patients will always follow the same guidance. And what we look to do is, if we look at concepts, so for instance, if you're having a recipe, we would swap out red meat for things like fish, beans, lentils, those leaner cuts of protein. And then also if we're looking in terms of your recipe, we would try to increase the vegetable intake. The concept we use is try to include the color of the rainbow on your plate, because the brighter your plate, the higher the antioxidant content. That then goes into your blood vessels in your heart and helps to improve on what we call oxidative damage, because over time that causes heart disease. So I think, the message is, the dietitian works on an individualized plan for the patient. And when we're looking at it, we can always tweak recipes by using the principles of avoiding red meat, whole grains. So instead of having white bread, white rice, white pasta in that recipe, trying to have the brown variant, because fiber has been shown us that it can reduce your cholesterol and improve your heart health.
I guess it then begs the question as to how do you personalize dietary recommendations to really meet the unique needs and health goals of your clients, especially considering the insights gleaned from studies involving thousands of patients as well?
Yeah, so, the role of a dietitian is that we look at the patient's medical history, we look at their blood values, so that's part of our assessment. We also look at medication that they're on, the side effects, the sort of foods that would enhance the medication working better. But we also look into things like the patient's preference, their lifestyle, their work schedule. And more importantly, in this day and age, we look at the patient's budget. So the message is, always to connect to a dietitian, whether in the private sector or the public sector. There's an abundance of dietitians. And we're waiting out there to walk the journey with the patient, but also to make an individualized plan. Something downloaded off the internet is not going to give you the best results specifically for your health status.
But are there any particular foods or even ingredients that, of course, the research involving those patients suggests that individuals should actually prioritize or even avoid for optimal health care? Yeah, so,
these are what we call sort of superfoods, and, we're always wary from advising on that, but we can list 3 of them. But before I go into that, just to mention that dietary patterns are more important than individual foods. So when we talk dietary patterns, we're talking Mediterranean diet, DASH diet, plant-based diet, and all of these include lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, not too much of processed foods, not too much of red meat, and trying to have a lot of roughage and fiber in your diet. But if we look at superfoods, the one could be your leafy green vegetables, so things like spinach and kale. They have been shown to contain nitrates as well as lots of fiber, and this helps your blood vessels. And in one of the studies, they actually showed a 26% reduction in cardiovascular risk by patients who consumed green leafy vegetables. The other one we could talk about is your berries and strawberries. These are exceptionally high in antioxidants, and as I mentioned, that protects your heart health. And then the last sort of superfood, which even though I don't want to like really use that word superfood, but the one that we can definitely advocate for is avocados. They have healthy fats in it. And there was a study which showed that consuming avocados twice a week reduced the risk for MIs or heart attacks by up to 26%. So just to recap, those sort of superfoods we talk about, berries and strawberries, looking at avocados, as well as leafy vegetables. But the message is that the dietary pattern, so whether it's plant-based proteins, whether it's Mediterranean or DASH diet, that's more important than the individual foods.
Omy, as we wrap up our conversation, can you share some examples of individuals who have improved their heart health through evidence-based dietary changes under your guidance, especially drawing from your experience as the Director of Newtricion Wellness?
Yeah, so that would fall into the category of what we call anecdotal evidence, which means, what we're seeing in everyday practice. And whilst it does hold some value, as I mentioned, us as dietitians, we practice evidence-based medicine. I'd rather share with you information of studies that included 130,000 patients over 18 countries. And what they found was adopting a healthy diet with the principles we discussed above included sort of an 18% reduction in mortality, so meaning death. So a 20% chance less that you die if you adopted healthy eating patterns. There's other studies which are multi-central as well that show when you adopt a healthy diet, it can actually reduce your risk for a heart attack by up to 40%. So, those studies are quotes that I would rather share with you rather than those one-on-one anecdotal cases.
That concludes our discussion with Omy Naidoo. He's the Director of Newtricion Wellness Dietitians, speaking to us about heart health, but also adopting healthy eating habits to promote a healthy heart as well.